Welcome to The Deep Dive, a segment of the Dansplain podcast. I'm Lily.
And I'm Edward. Great to be here.
And joining us today is the insightful Edward. Imagine if two compounds, naturally occurring right inside your body, held a key to sharpening your memory, speeding up your thoughts, maybe even offered a glimmer of hope against something like Alzheimer's disease.
It sounds almost too good to be true, doesn't it?
It really does, like science fiction. Well, today we're actually diving deep into the fascinating world of creatine and nitric oxide.
Yeah.
We've gathered, a stack of sources, scientific papers, clinical trials, analyses, and our mission is basically to pull out the most important nuggets for you.
So you can walk away feeling really well informed about these powerful agents in your brain's health.
Exactly.
And what's particularly compelling, Lily, is just how relevant this is right now. I mean, cognitive issues, Alzheimer's disease, it's a growing global health crisis. It impacts millions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the need for innovative strategies, new ways to support brain health, it's really urgent. And these two compounds, they're showing immense potential, though with some pretty complex mechanisms we need to unpack.
Okay, let's start with creatine then. Most of us, myself included, probably know it from the gym, right? For muscles.
Right, that's the common association.
But what about the brain? It turns out it's absolutely fundamental there too. Our brain, it's tiny, like 2% of our body mass.
Something like that, yeah.
But it uses a massive 20% of our total energy. So Edward, how does creatine help power such a demanding organ?
Well, you can think of it like your brain's emergency power generator.
Yeah.
Or maybe a rapid recharge battery system.
A battery system.
Okay. Creatine helps quickly resynthesize ATP, that's adenosine triphosphate, which is, the main energy currency for all your cells.
Right, ATP. Got it.
It does this by storing high-energy phosphate, basically energy potential, in a ready-to-go form called phosphocreatine. Then an enzyme, creatine kinase, helps release that energy super fast. And this whole system is just crucial for keeping the energy level stable, especially when the brain's working really hard, like complex thinking or if you're sleep deprived.
So it keeps the power on when you really need it.
Exactly. It helps your brain maintain its power supply under stress.
So, okay, anyone who's pulled an all-nighter studying or felt totally mentally drained after a big project, that rapid recharge battery isn't just a metaphor, is it? It's a real biological thing.
Precisely. It's so vital. The brain even has its own specific type of creatine kinase enzyme. And, if you have a condition where your brain can't use creatine properly, the neurological problems can be quite severe. Things like mental retardation, learning delays, even autism spectrum disorders.
Wow.
But the encouraging part is, in many of those cases, actually supplementing with creatine can significantly help. It can alleviate or sometimes even reverse those symptoms.
That's incredible.
It really highlights creatine's role in bolstering your brain's resilience against metabolic stress. It fights off cognitive fatigue proactively.
Okay, that's a really strong foundation. But how does this energy boost actually translate into, sharper thinking or better memory in everyday life?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the research gives us some pretty fascinating clues. When you supplement with creatine, studies consistently show it increases the actual creatine stores within your brain.
Okay, so you can measure that increase.
You can, yeah. And this boost in brain energy, that's thought to be the basis for the cognitive benefits. We've seen evidence that creatine can enhance memory and overall cognitive function, especially in, say, older adults, or when the brain is under that metabolic stress we talked about, like sleep deprivation.
Right.
There was a major review, a meta-analysis, pulling together their data from almost 500 people over 3 decades.
Wow, that's comprehensive.
It is. And it found significant positive effects specifically on memory, your attention span, and also how quickly you process information.
Okay, memory, attention, processing speed. That sounds pretty broadly beneficial. But are there nuances? Does it just make everyone instantly smarter, or is it more targeted?
That's a really good clarifying question. And it shows why you have to look closely at the details. That same big meta-analysis, it didn't find significant improvements in overall cognitive function, or in all aspects of executive function, across the board in the general healthy population.
Okay. So not a magic bullet for everything.
Exactly. It suggests creatine's benefits aren't this universal cognitive supercharge for every single brain task. It seems to be most helpful for tasks that really demand high energy, or maybe in people who are already experiencing some kind of metabolic stress, or maybe cognitive decline linked to aging or disease. It's more targeted, you could say.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Beyond just being an energy booster, creatine seems to be doing even more, potentially playing a role in the fight against Alzheimer's disease.
Absolutely, Lily. We're increasingly realizing that problems with brain energy metabolism are a key part of Alzheimer's, or AD. So creatine's role in just boosting energy is already a strong point there.
Makes sense.
But the benefits seem to go further. Creatine also shows some powerful neuroprotective properties. It acts as an antioxidant, kind of cleaning up harmful molecules called reactive oxygen species. It also helps reduce inflammation in the brain.
Okay.
And it's also described as anti-excitotoxic, which basically means it helps calm down overactive nerve signals that can otherwise drain energy and actually damage brain cells.
So it's protecting the cells in multiple ways.
It seems so. And crucially, researchers have seen that creatine can actually prevent harmful increases in another molecule we're going to talk about, nitric oxide. These increases can be triggered by those overactive nerve signals.
Ah, okay, so there's a link emerging already.
Yes. And creatine seems to help restore nitric oxide levels back to normal, while also stabilizing calcium levels inside the cells. This is really important because in AD, having too much calcium rush into brain cells is a major trigger for producing that damaging excess nitric oxide.
So it's not just giving the brain more fuel, it's like creatine is building this multi-layered defense system, protecting against several different kinds of damage.
Exactly. This sort of multi-pronged action makes creatine look like a very attractive possibility for AD therapy. And we actually have some initial human data to look at.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Creatine to Augment Bioenergetics and Alzheimer's study, they called it CAWA at the University of Kansas Medical Center. It was the first study to actually test creatine supplements in AD patients.
Okay, what did they do?
Well, it was a small pilot study. 20 patients took a pretty high dose, 20 grams a day, for 8 weeks. And the good news is it was very well tolerated. People stuck with it.
And the results? What were the key findings?
The really key finding was an impressive 11% increase in total creatine levels measured inside the brain. That's exactly what you'd hope to see proof that it's getting in there.
Right, it's actually reaching the target.
Precisely. And cognitively, the patient showed improvements across several important areas. Things suggesting, better overall mental sharpness, specific gains in memory and attention, too.
That sounds promising.
What's particularly interesting is they noted moderate improvements in working memory. That's like your mental scratch pad, holding information briefly, like in a card matching game, and also in executive functioning.
Executive functioning, like focus and planning.
Yeah, focus, planning, ignoring distractions. And these are cognitive areas that are significantly hit by Alzheimer's. Now, we have to remember, it was a pilot study. Small, no placebo control group.
Sure, caveats apply.
Definitely. But these are really encouraging first steps. They absolutely make the case for doing larger, more rigorous trials.
Okay. And beyond these first human trials, what about preclinical research? Like in animal models of AD, what have they shown?
Great question. In AD mouse models, giving them creatine also improved their cognitive function and brain energy use, much like we've been discussing. But significantly, it also seemed to reduce the actual pathological markers of AD.
You mean like the amyloid plaques and tau tangles?
Exactly. Reduced levels of amyloid-beta and that phosphorylated tau. To put that in perspective for you, these abnormal protein clumps and tangles are the defining hallmarks of AD. They literally clog up and damage brain cells.
So this suggests creatine might not just be helping with symptoms.
It suggests it might actually be disease-modifying, meaning it could potentially influence the core underlying pathology of Alzheimer's, not just mask the symptoms. It might be getting closer to the root of the problem.
Wow, okay, that is significant. Now let's switch gears a bit and turn our attention to that other molecule you mentioned, nitric oxide, or NO. This tiny molecule has a huge and, well, surprisingly complex role in our brains. Edward, can you tell us about its basic job?
Nitric oxide is truly remarkable, Lily. It's this tiny gaseous signaling molecule. It's made by enzymes called nitric oxide syntheses, or NS for short.
Okay.
In the brain, it acts as a really unique kind of neuromodulator. It's unconventional. It affects how our excitatory signals, like glutamate, and our inhibitory signals, like GABA, communicate.
So it influences the main communication lines.
Right. And it's considered absolutely fundamental for memory consolidation. It helps promote synaptic plasticity.
Synaptic plasticity. That's the brain changing its connections for learning, right?
Exactly. Strengthening or weakening connections between neurons, vital for learning and memory. And NO production is directly linked to brain activity. When a key neurotransmitter, glutamate, binds to certain receptors on nerve cells, these important gateways called NMDR,
But MDRs, okay.
it triggers calcium to rush into the cell. Calcium is a crucial signal ion, and that calcium influx then activates the NOS enzyme to make nitric oxide.
Okay.
So it's right there at the heart of how our brain cells talk to each other and form memories.
Okay, so NO sounds incredibly important for a healthy learning brain. But, as you hinted, our sources suggest there's a darker side, especially when it comes to Alzheimer's. How does something so vital turn problematic?
Yeah, that's the crux of its dual role, as researchers call it. At normal physiological balance concentrations, NO is definitely neuroprotective. It promotes plasticity, helps memory, protects brain cells.
The good side.
The good side.
Yeah.
But at excessive levels, or when it's produced in a dysregulated way, especially by certain problematic forms of that NOS enzyme, it becomes neurotoxic. It can actually lead to cell death. And in Alzheimer's disease, we see this really distinct and damaging shift. The activity of the beneficial MAS enzymes tends to decrease, while the problematic ones, particularly types called NOS and INOS, they become overactive. And this leads to an overload of NO. This imbalance is absolutely key to understanding its harmful effects in AD.
So it's not just NO itself, but where it's coming from and how much?
Precisely. And this NO overload is deeply tangled up with the core AD pathology. It's associated with those amyloid-beta deposits and the tau tangles we talked about. For instance, soluble egg oligomers. Those toxic early forms of amyloid, they actually stimulate INOS in astrocytes, which are support cells in the brain, leading to more NO production.
Okay, so the amyloid itself triggers more NO.
Yes, and at the same time, AGA messes up the normal cleanup of glutamate, that main excitatory signal. This overactivates those NMDAR gateways, causing way too much calcium to flood in. And that calcium surge then activates NOS, leading to a significant NO overload from another source.
Wow, so it's like a cascade. The initial AD problems trigger this runaway NO production.
Exactly, it's a vicious cycle. And this elevated NO, when it mixes with high levels of reactive oxygen species, those damaging molecules that are also common in AD brains, it creates something even worse. Potent reactive nitrogen species, like peroxynitrite.
Reactive nitrogen species? That sounds bad.
It is. Essentially, when NO production goes haywire at AD, it combines with these other damaging molecules to create this kind of chemical firestorm in the brain. It causes widespread cell damage, inflammation, and it really accelerates neurodegeneration. We can actually measure markers of this nitrosative stress in the brains of AD patients, confirming this destructive process is happening.
Man, it sounds like a real therapeutic tightrope walk then. If NO can be both good and bad, how on earth do we harness the good without triggering the bad?
You've absolutely hit the nail on the head. That's the central therapeutic challenge. We can't just broadly increase NO or broadly decrease it. That would be, well, ineffective or even harmful.
Like trying to put out a fire by flooding the whole building or turning off all the water, maybe?
That's a great analogy. Instead, the goal has to be to selectively modulate the specific NO enzymes, or to very precisely control NO levels, to try and restore that delicate balance. We want to maximize the neuroprotective effects while carefully mitigating the neurotoxic ones. It requires a much, much more nuanced approach than simply more is better or less is better.
Okay, so we have creatine, this energy buffer, and neuroprotector, and we have nitric oxide, this powerful neuromodulator that can turn toxic under certain conditions. The obvious question then becomes, do they interact? Do they work together? Is there some kind of synergy between them? And if so, how does that play out in the brain?
That's a really pivotal question, Lily. And while, direct evidence of a full-blown, clearly defined synergy is still an active area of research, there is compelling indirect evidence pointing towards a very beneficial interplay.
Okay, indirect evidence. Like what?
Well, remember how we discussed creatine's ability to help stabilize intracellular calcium? And how it can prevent those glutamate-induced increases in NO levels in neuron glia cells?
Right, you mentioned that earlier.
That's highly significant because that glutamate excitotoxicity and the calcium problems are major triggers for the pathological NO overload we just talked about in AD. So by acting as this kind of crucial homeostatic regulator, creatine seems to help maintain the delicate balance of NO signaling. It appears to subtly prevent it from tipping over into the toxic range.
Huh. So creatine isn't just doing its own thing over here with energy. It's actively helping keep NO on the beneficial path, almost like a traffic cop for brain signaling.
That's a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to act as a crucial regulator, helping prevent NO from spiraling into that neurotoxic territory.
Interesting.
And we even have some human evidence that hints at this synergy. There have been studies looking at something called creatine nitrate.
Creatine nitrate, so a compound combining both.
Exactly. Designed to deliver both creatine and a precursor for nitric oxide. One study was a randomized, crossover, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, though it did include caffeine as well.
Okay, a few factors there.
Right. But they found that taking creatine nitrate significantly enhanced cognitive function. Specifically, participants did better on something called the Stroop word color interference test, and they performed better with creatine nitrate than when they just took caffeine alone.
So a cognitive boost beyond just caffeine.
Seems so. Now, the study was done in resistance-trained males, so we need to consider the population, and the caffeine complicates it slightly. But it does provide some human evidence suggesting potential cognitive benefits from tackling both pathways with a combined approach.
So, okay, there's definitely a signal there for potential synergy, right? Even if the precise, direct molecular mechanisms are still being figured out.
Exactly. And if you connect this to the bigger picture for Alzheimer's, it really suggests that a multi-pronged therapeutic strategy might be particularly effective. You've got creatine addressing the energy deficits, fighting oxidative stress, and as we've just seen, maybe indirectly helping to regulate those harmful NO pathways.
Right.
This makes looking at combined strategies or compounds that influence both really compelling, even if the research on the direct molecular synergy is still, somewhat limited.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly promising for our understanding of brain health, potential treatments. But like with any cutting-edge research, there are always hurdles, right? Challenges to overcome. Edward, what are the big ones standing in the way of these compounds reaching their full potential?
Oh, absolutely. There are several critical limitations and areas that really need more research. For creatine, a big challenge is just getting enough of it into the brain effectively.
The delivery problem.
Right. We need more studies that don't just look at cognitive function, but also simultaneously measure the actual creatine concentrations in the brain. Maybe using techniques like MRS, magnetic resonance spectroscopy.
To see how much is getting there and if it correlates with effects.
Exactly. To establish clear dose-response relationships, the brain has that very protective blood-brain barrier, and creatine doesn't cross it super easily, so we might need higher doses or maybe longer supplementation periods to really get significant brain accumulation compared to, say, muscles. And that SIBA study, while it was groundbreaking, we have to remember it was a pilot. Small sample, no control group. It really just highlights the need for much larger, more robust trials for creatine and AD.
Okay. And what are the challenges with nitric oxide?
Well, with NO, the major hurdle is precisely understanding what level is beneficial versus harmful in different brain regions and how these levels change over time. Because of that dual role, any attempt to manipulate it therapeutically requires extreme care and selectivity. You need to target the right pathways without causing unintended harm.
That tightrope walk again.
Definitely.
And what about figuring out the best dose, the right way to take these, and ensuring they're safe over the long haul? That seems critical, especially for brain health supplements.
Absolutely vital. For creatine, we need to nail down the optimal long-term dosing strategy. What dose sustains elevated brain levels and provide cognitive benefits over months or years, especially in vulnerable groups like AD patients.
Sure.
For NO, the focus is really shifting towards developing clever, targeted delivery systems. Things like specific NO-releasing platforms or donors that can precisely control the amount and the timing of NO release right at the target site in the brain. This could limit potential side effects, the cytotoxicity.
Or a precision delivery.
Exactly. And for both compounds, we absolutely need comprehensive long-term safety data. That's crucial before anyone considers using these chronically, especially in older adults or people with existing health conditions.
It really sounds like we're still in the relatively early stages then, relying a lot on preclinical work, animal models, small pilot studies. What's the next big step needed to bridge that gap to potential real-world applications?
The urgent need, really, is for larger, well-designed, randomized controlled trials, or RCTs. So many of the exciting findings are from those earlier stage studies. That meta-analysis on creatine showed promise for memory, yes, but it still concluded we need more robust, large-scale trials. And for NO, despite its known importance physiologically, clinical trials testing targeted NO modulation for cognitive enhancement or AD treatment are still pretty nascent. There's this critical translational gap we need to cross, from promising lab data to proven clinical effectiveness.
And these larger trials, what should they be looking at specifically?
They need to include rigorous cognitive assessments, obviously, but also validated AD biomarkers, tracking things like amyloid-beta levels, tau levels, markers of neuroinflammation in participants. This is crucial to see if an intervention is just improving symptoms or if it's actually modifying the underlying disease process. That's the ultimate goal, right? Disease modification.
Right, getting to the root cause. And finally, it sounds like we also need a deeper understanding of exactly how these compounds work at the molecular level, plus better ways to measure their effects.
Precisely. While we have the general ideas creatine for energy, NO for signaling the specific molecular pathways involved need much more detailed mapping out. How exactly does creatine reduce p-tau? How does it modulate NO signaling? And tied to that is the need for reliable biomarkers.
Things we can easily measure.
Yeah, things that correlate well with cognitive improvements, maybe non-invasive ways to track brain creatine levels or specific markers of that nitrosative stress or inflammation. Having good biomarkers will guide how we design future trials and could eventually lead to more personalized approaches based on an individual's specific needs.
So, after all this, what does it mean for, the listeners trying to navigate this complex landscape of brain health? What are the main takeaways from our deep dive today?
Well, I think the key points are creatine shows a really robust neuroprotective profile. It bolsters brain energy. It helps reduce that damaging oxidative stress. And importantly, it's showing early promise in actually modulating those core AD hallmarks like amyloid-beta and tau, as we saw hinted at in the C2 BEST study.
Okay, creatine looks promising, multifaceted.
Definitely. Nitric oxide, on the other hand, is fundamental. It's vital for memory, but it presents this really complex dual role. Precise modulation is absolutely key if we want to harness its benefits without triggering its neurotoxic side.
The double-edged sword.
Exactly. And the really intriguing part, I think, is how creatine seems to subtly help regulate those potentially detrimental NO pathways. It hints at this powerful, though still not fully understood, synergy between these two natural compounds in helping to fortify our brain's resilience.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Imagine a future where, by truly understanding these intricate molecular dances happening inside us, we could actually fine-tune our brain's resilience, not just protecting against decline, but maybe even unlocking new levels of cognitive potential throughout our lives.
Really compelling thought.
What other natural compounds, maybe still kind of lurking in the shadows of the scientific literature, might be waiting to reveal their own surprising impact on our cognitive health? Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into creatine and nitric oxide.
It's been fascinating.
We really hope this exploration has given you a fresh perspective on the incredible complexity and the potential within our own biology. Thank you for listening to another episode of Dansplain. Please like, subscribe, and hey, visit www.dansplain.xyz for our latest articles, episodes, products, and more.